The idea the government wants to explore is called platooning. 3 trucks travelling much closer together than normal, their speed and distance controlled by wireless technology. Each lorry would have a driver in the cab in case of emergencies. Supporters say it could mean less congestion, fuel consumption and pollution. But some transport experts have doubts. The Road Haulage Association has major concerns. It's worried the convoys could block motorway exits and entrances. It also fears the wireless technology could be hijacked by terrorists. The AA is also concerned. It says platooning might work in America, where there are long, uncongested stretches of roads, whereas ours are much busier.
Well, Kristian Wilma is an author and transport expert and has written about the myth of driverless cars. He was a Labour candidate in the Richmond by-election in 2016.
Hi there.
A myth, really? Or do you think that what we've heard today is a step towards turning that myth into reality?
Well, there's a fantastic amount of hype about the idea that driverless cars are around the corner and we're going to have, millions of them on the road very soon. This announcement is typical, actually, because it's about the third time that the government has said, there's going to be driverless platoons of lorries on the motorways next year or the year after. We've had this announcement before and it hasn't happened. And what is this trying to solve? That's the clear issue. I don't think it will solve any congestion issues for a start.
Well, it's supposed to make things more environmentally friendly, isn't it? Because, as I understand it, the fact is that the front vehicle will displace the air and therefore the other 2 vehicles will use less energy to travel the same distance.
That's fantastically marginal. And there is another far older invention that would actually do that in a much more efficient way with maybe 40 or 50 of wagon loads, which would be, of course, the train, the freight train. We could actually build extra capacity into our railways to accommodate freight trains rather than having this emphasis on roads which are already overcrowded.
All right, even though you're a bit sniffy about this, do you not accept that it's worth trying, or do you think there are real risks involved?
Well, I think there's better things that could be done, as one of your respondents said, with the £8 million. I can't really
Such as
see...
What?
Well, you could spend the money on improving cycling facilities. One of my particular things. You could improve spend the money on improving the railways, as I've suggested. 3 lorries following each other is pretty dangerous on our overcrowded motorways. A lot of this technology has been developed in the United States, where there's huge freeways running for hundreds of miles with not much traffic. This is totally different. I can't see this as ever being viable on the M25. Can you?
Well, it's for me to ask the questions rather than you. And I suppose one that will occur to people as they listen to you is that if you don't try things a little bit, and if you don't dream a bit about what the future might look like, you're never going to get anywhere. And actually the idea of driverless cars is immensely appealing if it can be made to work.
Well, is it appealing? I've talked to motorists about this, and a lot of them say, well, I actually quite enjoy motoring. People, amazingly enough, do. Of course, they don't particularly in congested towns, but they like having control over their own cars. They like leaving the golf clubs overnight in the car. This whole vision perpetrated by the tech companies and by the auto manufacturers is of a driverless future where we all have pods that will be driven automatically around city centres. But I'm not sure this is necessarily a utopia. I think it's more of a dystopia.
No, but isn't it worth exploring? For example, safety. If driverless cars have decent technology, they'd probably be safer than a lot of us. You don't have to get tired driving on long journeys. There are all sorts of things that you can imagine being advantages.
I think you can try driver aids, support drivers to improve their driving, with better braking systems and that sort of thing. But my view is that the driverless nirvana that the auto manufacturers and tech manufacturers are talking about is nowhere near achievable or desirable? I mean, do we really want to put some, 500,000 or 1,000,000 taxi drivers and lorry drivers out of jobs when we already have unemployment problems? What is the aim of this? Nobody has managed to actually explain that, and what the future is. Of course, safety is a potential issue, but remember, there was a case in America where a guy relied on his automatic driving car, and it actually crashed into a lorry and killed him while he was watching a Harry Potter film.
Thank you. Professor Phil Blythe is the Director of the Transport Operations Research Group at Newcastle University and advises the Department for Transport. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Before we address some of those bigger questions, the clear concern that came through one or two of those drivers who Dan Whitworth talked to at a petrol station in Lancashire was, unsurprisingly perhaps, about safety. One doesn't imagine you let these experiments on the road without being sure that they are safe, but reassure us.
Well, I think the whole point of doing controlled trials like they're proposing on the motorway is to test out things like safety, environmental benefits and others that could occur with automated vehicles. And I think until you test them, you can't get the what-if questions in your mind. So I think actually having some well-established and controlled trials is worth doing just to answer the question one way or the other.
But that's slightly alarming, isn't it? I mean, the idea that we can't be sure, given what might happen if it went wrong on a motorway, 3 great big lorries trundling down the road. I mean, shouldn't you be sure that we can be confident they're not going to kill us before you let them loose?
Well, from my understanding, the way the trials are planned, and clearly the Department for Transport and Transport Research Laboratory who are running these trials have been doing a lot of work.
Are you still with us, Phil Blythe? I know you're...
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Jess, you're dropping in and out. I know you very kindly stopped somewhere fairly remote to talk to us, but you're dropping in and out about it. But let's keep going and continue with what you were saying.
Okay, well, my understanding is the trials have been designed to test a whole range of functions of the vehicle when the vehicles are talking to each other. But there is a driver in the car ready to take over, in the lorry, if things look like they're not going well. So I think they've been planned in a very cautious and safe way. But as I say, until you get these vehicles on the road and test them, it's very unlikely that you can really understand any future challenges with the safety issues associated with them.
All right, well, let's address some of the bigger questions that Kristian Wilma raised a moment or two ago. Where is this going? What is the vision that inspires spending quite a lot of money on something like this?
All the automotive manufacturers have been beguiled by automation for a number of years now. They all have their own programs for developing automated vehicles, and there's big programs in Europe, in Japan, in the States.
I'm sorry, I think we've just try once more. Phil Blythe, are you still with us? I think we better leave it there. Thank you, if you can still hear us, for joining us and making an effort to do so. And our apologies for that.